Welcome to today's tutorial. So this is the sample of the trouser we're working with. So let's get into it. First of all, we are going to be marking out our 2 inches top line. Mark out 2 inches from the top of the paper downwards, then connect it with a straight line. From that place, that 2 inches point, that is where we'll be getting all our measurements. So that 2 inches serves as our waist measurement. I'm also going to be marking out 2 inches from the side of the paper as well, and this will serve as my side line. Always remember to label your points or your lines. So I'm marking out 2 inches, marking it on a straight line, and this line now is going to serve as my side line. So now I have my top line 2 inches and my side line of 2 inches. Because I don't want the waistline of this trouser to be too high, I am not going to be starting exactly from my waistline. So I am going to be removing 1 inch from my actual waist to hip measurement and the length of the trouser as well. And I'm also going to be removing an extra 1 inch for my band. So from there, I am going to be getting all the measurements. For example, I'm marking my waist to hip measurement now. My waist to hip measurement is 9 inches, but I have removed 1 inch as a reduction from the trouser length because I don't want it to be too high, and also 1 inch from that same waist to hip measurement because of my band. So now I have 7 inches. So I've marked 7 inches from my waist down, and I've marked that place as my hip line. So I'm also going to be marking my crotch depth from that same point, but I'm also going to be removing that same 2 inches from my crotch depth to get my crotch depth. So my crotch depth is 11.5 inches, but I'm marking 9.5 inches because of that reduction. Always label your points. So I'm connecting with a straight line, and after that I'll go ahead and label the sides, as the first one as my hip line, while the second one as my crotch depth. Now I'm going to go ahead and mark the full length of my trouser. So I've marked the full length of my trouser minus 2 inches. Then from my crotch depth to my ankle line, which is the end of the trouser, I'll get half of that distance and mark it as my knee line. The length between the crotch depth and the ankle length, that's the end of the trouser, half of it is my knee line. So that is what I've just done, and I'm going to connect that with a straight line. So now I am going to go ahead and cross-check all my measurements and make sure they are okay. So on the waistline, go in by 1.5 inches. Now, this is because the hip of a lady is always curved, and this is a female pants that we are doing. So go in by 1.5 inches. But if your hip is very much curvy, like very much like an hourglass shape, you can go in by 2 inches or 2.5 inches, depending on how wide and how tiny your waist is. So that is just on the waistline. Then on the hip line, I am going to be marking the measurement of my hip divided by 4 plus 2 inches for seam allowance on both sides. So now I am just going to be dividing my hip. My hip is 40 inches, and if I divide it by 4, I am going to be getting 10 inches, and 10 inches plus 2 inches is 12 inches. So I'm going to be marking exactly 12 inches on that line. Now the reason is that I am going to be I'm going to be sewing the two parts, both the crotch line and the side line. So I'm going to need allowances for those two parts. So on the hip line as well, on the sides, I am also going to come in by 1.5 inches, then connect it with a straight line. Also connect the other 2 points that serves as my hip measurements together. Connect them together with a straight line as well. On the crotch line, impute your lapse measurement divided by 2 plus 2 inches for seam allowance. Remember that this paper, I am cutting it as if you are cutting directly on your fabric. So also extend that line, this line, down to your crotch depth. On the waistline, impute your waist circumference measurement divided by 4 plus 2 inches for the seam allowance. Then mark it on that line. You are going to be measuring from the 1.5 inches line into the body of the pattern. Just watch what I'm doing and do it exactly like that. This is not hard. Just pay attention to what I'm doing and do it like that. So once you have marked this, connect it directly to the hip line. Do not curve it like that. Mark a straight line and connect it to the hip line, just like you see me do. I'm trying to clean off that line so that you don't get confused. So, but that waist measurement line that you have marked, you're going to connect it directly to the hip line, to the measurements of the hip, where the measurement of the hip stopped. But first, I want to connect my waistline and my hip line together using a curve so that I will see how the shape of the trouser actually looks like. So when I'm done with this, I am now going to connect the points from the waistline to the hip line and to the crotch depth on the other side of the measurement of my measurement. So here I am making sure that my hip measurement is showing, and then on the crotch depth, that's on the crotch line, I went in by 1/2 inch. That was what you saw me do. I went in by 1/2 inch, and from that 1/2 inch I marked out my lapse measurement divided by 2 plus 2 inches. I'm going to try and explain this as much as I can, but I would love for you to look at what I'm doing and do likewise. So before I connect those 3 points together, I want to first of all create an arc. If you look closely to the paper, you will see the dots for the waistline, the hip line, and the line for the lapse measurement. Now I want to create an angle 45 on that point. Create angle 45 on that point. Mark a straight line. Now measure what is remaining on that point from that hip line measurement that extended downwards to the end of the crotch line. That's to the end of the measurement for the lapse. Just watch what I'm measuring and do likewise. So how did I get my arc? I divided that point into 2 minus 1. So at that point, I got 3 inches for my own. I got 3 inches. I divided into 2. I got 1.5 minus 1. I got half. As you can see, I've already marked my 1/2 inch. But another thing is this: when you are placing your curve, if it doesn't sit well with your 1/2 inch, sit your ruler well and curve it the way you wish, but make sure it is not too deep or too far away from the actual curve of the crotch depth. So this is exactly how it should look like. Like I said, just follow what I am doing and do it exactly the way I am doing it. This is very easy, very, very, very easy. It doesn't take me much time to do this, but because I am doing it as a tutorial, it's taking time. So I am also going to go ahead and curve my hips into that half-inch point that I created on the sideline. This is because I already told you that a female hips or a lady's hips is curved, so you have to create that curve there so that you have a curvy hips on that part, and make sure it is not pointed. That's what I'm doing. I'm making sure it is not pointed as well. Now I am going to measure what I have on this line. This is my crotch line. I am going to measure what I had there, divide it into two, and place a mark on that place because I want to get the center part of this trouser, or rather the midpoint. So I am going to do that as well, straight down. And I am going to go ahead and connect the lines, the points, with a straight line. After that, you come down to the knee and impute your knee circumference measurement divided by 2 plus 2 inches for the seam. Then my knee measurement was 17.5 inches divided by 2. I have 8.25 inches. 8.75 inches, sorry. Then plus 2 inches, I have 10.75 inches. So now I am going to be dividing that 10.75 inches into 2, and I'm going to be imputing the measurement side by side. So I'm going to be putting 5.4 inches on both sides, making it 10.75 inches. I hope you understand what I mean. So I am going to do the same for the ankle measurements. Ankle measurement divided by 2 plus 2 inches. I'm going to divide it into 2 and impute the measurement side by side. So just watch what I'm doing and just do likewise. It's not hard. So watch how I am going to be connecting the lines. Watch how I am placing my ruler to connect the lines. So on the waistline, come down by 1/2 inch, connect it to the side of the trouser. Now, when you're making this connection, make sure it does not exceed your seam allowance. For example, my seam allowance is 2 inches, is about 2 inches. That's what I added. But I know I am not going to be sewing with that 2 inches seam allowance. But I'm going to come out by that 2 inches and make sure that my line does not exceed that 2 inches, so that when I am joining both the front and the back, it will not give me problems, or it will not look like one is longer than one. So just connect it the way I have connected it. Just look at what I'm doing and do likewise. Yeah, so when you are done with that, this is it for the front part. Then we are going to proceed to marking out the back part. Now for the back part, I am going to be adding 2 inches on the crotch side. On the crotch side of the trousers, I am going to be adding 2 inches on that side. Now this trouser also, I do not want it to be too tight, so I am going to come to that. But if you want this trouser to be tight and fitted enough, just go ahead and mark your 2 inches like this and connect it this way. But I don't want it to be too tight. I want the down part of the trouser to be a little bit free. So that is exactly what I am trying to calculate. But then I want to show you how you can get a partial palazzo trouser. Now, partial palazzo trouser is when the trouser is tight on only the laps towards the crotch depth. Then from that crotch depth downwards is free. So now, if you want it to be tight from the knee upwards and to be free from the knee downwards, just take the measurement of your knee and replace it with what you have on your ankle, just like you see me do. So take what you have on your knee and just bring it down to the ankle, connect with a straight line, and it gives you a palazzo that is not too bogus. Now this is just like probably an office trouser that the leg is a little bit wide, not too bogus, not too dramatic. Yeah, so this is what we have. But then if you want a partial palazzo, just like I'm doing, come down by 5 inches from the crotch depth. Come down by 5 inches. Take the measurement of what you have on that 5 inches line and replace it with what you have on your knee line. Then connect it to your ankle, because you have also replaced the measurement of the ankle with what you have on your knee line. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Now let me repeat it. Just move what you have gotten, the measurement of what you have 5 inches downwards from the crotch depth. Move that measurement to the knee, then move your knee measurement to the ankle, and you have a partial palazzo trouser. But then I'm going to mark this because I just want to show you, and I want this class as detailed as possible. Now, if you also want it a full palazzo pants, like a very full palazzo pants, just like you used to do for your Ankara baggy, Ankara free palazzo pants, you can just go ahead and not even mark anything on the hip, on the knee line and on the ankle line. Use what you've gotten for your laps, use it to mark for the hip and for the ankle as well. Make it straight like that. But if you want a partial palazzo, do it the way I am doing it in the picture, in the video. But then personally, for this particular trouser or for this particular tutorial, I don't want this. So I am going to go ahead, clean it off, and show you what I want. Now, feel free to also do whatever you want, or to follow the picture your client gave you. If the lapse is tight, then that means you have to start from wherever this trouser is free to start marking your lines. So if the trouser is free from the lapse area, then you can do what you have on this video. If it's free from the knee area, you can just go ahead. So depending on what your client wants, you can do it, and you can go ahead and do it and make it as free as you want. It's your choice. So you have liberty. This part it doesn't really have any restrictions. You can decide to do anything you want on this part. Where you have to be very careful is on your crotch line. That beginning part where I explained everything. That's why I took my time to explain that beginning part very well. Your crotch depth, your hip area, that curve, that arc, you have to pay close attention to it so you don't make mistakes. But this one I'm doing now, feel free to customize it the way you want. Now let's go over to the back part. Remember that I said you have to mark 2 inches on the crotch side of your trouser. Mark 2 inches down, all through, from the crotch depth to the ankle. Add extra 2 inches on the side. So I am connecting the line, extending it by 2 inches, and I'm going to also do the same down to the ankle, and I'm going to be connecting with a straight line. Just watch what I'm doing and do likewise. I'm also going to mark an arc or create an arc for the back pattern, because it's not going to be sitting on the same arc with the front pattern. So I'm going to also measure that part just like I did for the front. I'm going to measure that part where my left hand is, measure it, divide it by 2 minus 1, and I will impute the measurement of what I have on that angle 45. So remember that if you're marking this arc and it's not giving you what you want, you use your curved ruler to make it nice so that it will sit properly. Now I am also going to be extending this crotch depth by 1.5 inches. Look at where my hand is. I am going to be extending it upwards from the actual waistline that I have marked, the one that I've removed 1/2 inch from. I am going to be extending that part by 1/2 inch, and I am going to be going in on the waistline as well by 1/2 inch as well. Now, this going in by 1/2 inch, if this person's hip is very much curvy, emphasis on very much curvy, if it is very much curvy, you can use 1 inch so that it can sit properly. So if you go in by 1/2 inch, you go up by 1.5 inches. Just watch what I'm doing and do likewise. So when you do that, you connect the lines together just like I did for the front pattern. Connect the lines together, the 1.5 inches to the 1/2 inch down to the hip line, and then also curve the arc and extend it to the 2 inches extension. You understand what I mean? So just watch what I'm doing and do likewise. So I am also going to take my waistline for the back from this point. I'm taking my waistline for the back from this point. I'm sorry, I didn't know my hand was blocking this so much, but I'm going to be taking my waistline, and it's going to also touch the side of the front part before I can extend it downwards. So take the exact waistline plus 2 inches for seam allowance, just the same way I did for the front. But because I came in by half of an inch on the starting point of the front part, it is going to extend towards the side parts a little bit. So just do it like that. I am also still going to highlight with a marker so that you will see what I'm doing. So when you have extended that line, connect to the straight line, curve it into the hip part, and that will be it. Just watch what I'm doing and do likewise. So now I have started highlighting them with a marker. The part that I highlighted with red is the back part. I highlighted the back pattern with red marker, and I am going to highlight the front with black so that you will see exactly all the points and how they look like. Now, this pattern drafting is not the regular pattern drafting method that we know. For example, in the regular pattern drafting, you don't need to add seam allowances on your pattern. You add seam allowances when you have started marking them on the fabric. But I am doing this because some of you may not have access to pattern. Some are beginners, some are not even fashion designers, some are people that just want to make this for themselves. They have sewing machines at home. So I want this class as detailed as possible so that a layman can understand it. So that is why I was adding seam allowances on the pattern. So now this means that you can decide not to use a pattern paper and mark this directly on your fabric. You can decide not to use a pattern paper and mark this directly on your fabric. And for clarity's sake, I will also be doing this exact thing on my fabric. I will not be using this pattern paper to trace out what I did. Now the normal thing is for me to trace it out, but I am going to be repeating this same process on my fabric so that you will see that you can actually mark this directly on your fabric. But I am not going to be explaining it. I am not going to be doing a voiceover. I'm just going to show you silently, and you just have to watch the video. If you feel like that one is clearer, or you believe that that's the one that you understand better, you can follow that one. But if you feel like you want to cut out your pattern and trace it out on your fabric, good for you. But I want to also make sure that you are not missing out on any part. And after that, I'm also going to do a sewing video for you, so you see how I actually made my trousers. So yeah, this is the fabric I'm using. I'm using a crepe fabric. Now I will advise you, whenever you're making a trouser, use crepe fabric, suiting, or a senator material or something like that, so that your trousers will sit properly. Or you use Ankara. Do not use fabrics that are going to give you tough time. You can use any fabric for it, but they are best with this fabric. And whenever you're using a very stretchy fabric, if the fabric you're using is extremely stretchy, that means you'll be reducing your measurements by the actual measurement that you have. For example, if your material is super stretchy, like if it is lycra material, if your fabric is lycra and you want to use it for this trouser pattern, instead of using 40 inches, that is my actual hip, I might be using 38, because it is super stretchy and I want it tight. Except you don't want it to be tight, but if you want it tight, you will have to reduce your measurement. So that is it. Just watch closely, watch this video, follow what I did, and do likewise. See you in my sewing class. Bye.